The smell of roasting meat drifted through the Lagos night air, and nobody suspected it was human. Imagine living in one of Africa's busiest cities, millions of people rushing past the same spot every single day, and right beneath their feet, under a concrete bridge in the heart of Lagos, a monster was feasting on human flesh. This isn't fiction. This isn't a horror movie. This is the true story of Clifford Orji, Nigeria's first documented serial killer and cannibal. And what you're about to hear will shake you to your core. But here's the question that haunts Lagos to this day: how many victims were there really? Before he became a monster, Clifford Orji was just another face in the crowd. Born in Enugu State in the early 1960s, his early life remains shrouded in mystery. Who was he as a child? What darkness lurked in his past? These questions may never be answered because Clifford took most of his secrets to the grave. By the late 1990s, he had made his way to Lagos, that sprawling megacity where dreams are made and shattered daily. In a city of over 10 million people, it's easy to disappear. It's even easier to hide in plain sight. And Clifford Orji? He was about to do both. The Oshodi Isolo area of Lagos is chaos incarnate. Markets overflow into streets, buses honk endlessly, traders shout their wares, and humanity presses together in a sweaty, vibrant mass. The perfect place for someone to vanish into the background. Clifford initially set up a small stall under the Isolo flyover, selling razor blades to passers-by. It seemed innocent enough, just another hustler trying to survive in Lagos's brutal economy. But this was just the beginning of his cover story. Soon, he began to change. He started acting erratically, claiming to be a native doctor with mystical powers. He let his appearance deteriorate, his clothes became ragged, and he adopted the persona of a madman. In Nigeria, the mad are invisible. And Clifford Orji was counting on exactly that. Under the concrete shadow of the Isolo flyover, Clifford built his lair. To everyone passing overhead, it was just another homeless encampment, the kind you see and quickly forget. But this was no ordinary shelter. He surrounded himself with trash and debris, creating a makeshift fortress that most people wouldn't dare approach. The local area boys left him alone. After all, he was just a crazy man. The police ignored him. Passers-by quickened their pace when they saw him. During the daytime, he would occasionally chase people who wandered too close, screaming gibberish and waving his arms. This reinforced his image as someone to avoid, someone harmless but unpredictable. But at night? At night, the real Clifford Orji emerged. Here's something that will chill you. For months, maybe even years, people smelled something cooking under that bridge. The scent of roasting meat would drift up from Clifford's hideout, especially late at night. Some locals mentioned it in passing. "That madman is cooking something down there again," they'd say with a shrug. Some assumed he'd caught a stray dog or a large rat. Others thought he might have stolen meat from the nearby market. Nobody, and I mean nobody, suspected the truth. The human mind has a powerful defense mechanism. We see what we expect to see, we smell what we expect to smell. When we see a homeless man cooking meat, we don't imagine it could be human flesh. But that's exactly what Clifford Orji was counting on. Clifford didn't select his victims randomly. He was calculating, patient, and terrifyingly strategic. He targeted the vulnerable, street hawkers who worked late, homeless individuals who wouldn't be missed, young women traveling alone, people whose disappearance wouldn't trigger immediate alarm. In a city like Lagos, where people go missing regularly, swallowed up by poverty, accidents, or crime, a few more disappearances didn't raise red flags. Families would search, file police reports that went nowhere, and eventually, the cases would go cold. During interrogations, Clifford would later hint at his methods. He would watch, wait, and strike when his victims were most vulnerable. Sometimes he'd lure them with promises of medicine or spiritual help. Other times, he'd simply overpower them in the darkness. How many people walked past that bridge, never knowing they were feet away from their potential killer? What made Clifford Orgy particularly terrifying was his ability to maintain two completely different personas. By day, he was the raving lunatic that everyone avoided. By night, he transformed into something far more sinister, organized, methodical, and deadly. Some reports suggest he maintained connections with people beyond his bridge. The items later found in his possession, expensive mobile phones, checks worth significant amounts, hinted at a network. Was he supplying body parts for ritual purposes? Was he working with others? These questions have never been fully answered, but they point to a disturbing possibility: Clifford Orgy wasn't working alone. And if he wasn't alone, who else was involved in this nightmare? Let's talk about the victims we know about. One woman who survived Clifford's captivity later provided chilling testimony. She described being held prisoner for several days, kept as what investigators would later call a sex slave, before she was scheduled to be killed. She was emaciated, brutalized, and had lost hope of rescue. In that dark space under the bridge, she had witnessed horrors that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She'd seen body parts, smelled the cooking flesh, and knew she was meant to be next. She wasn't his first prisoner, and evidence suggested she wouldn't have been his last. But fate was about to intervene in the most unexpected way. Joseph Bello was exhausted. He'd spent the entire night at a church vigil, praying and worshiping until the early morning hours. As dawn broke over Lagos on February 3, 1999, he began his walk home across the Isolo flyover. The city was still relatively quiet, that brief window before Lagos explodes into its daily chaos. Joseph's footsteps echoed on the concrete as he walked, his mind probably on getting home, getting some rest. Then he heard it. A woman's voice, crying out in the darkness below. He had no idea that his decision to investigate would expose one of Nigeria's most horrific crimes. At first, Joseph thought he was imagining things. The voice was faint, desperate, floating up from beneath the bridge. He stopped walking and listened more carefully. There it was again, a woman's voice, crying, almost singing in her desperation. But who would be under a bridge at this hour? And why would she be crying like that? Joseph faced a choice. He could keep walking, mind his business, get home safely. Or he could investigate. Something in that cry, the raw desperation, the sound of a soul in torment, pulled at him. Perhaps it was the spiritual high from the all-night vigil, perhaps it was simple human decency, or perhaps it was divine intervention. Whatever the reason, Joseph Bello decided to climb down and look. As Joseph made his way down toward the source of the crying, the first thing that hit him was the smell. It wasn't like anything he'd encountered before, a sickly sweet, rotten odor that made his stomach turn. It was the smell of death, of decay, of something fundamentally wrong. But he kept going. The crying grew louder, more desperate. The woman knew someone was coming. Maybe this was her last chance for rescue. Maybe this was her final hope. As Joseph's eyes adjusted to the dim light under the bridge, he began to make out shapes. Piles of trash, makeshift shelters, and then what he saw next would be burned into his memory forever. Joseph Bello stumbled into what can only be described as a scene from humanity's darkest nightmares. There, chained and emaciated, was a young woman, her eyes wide with terror and hope as she saw her potential rescuer. But that wasn't all. Scattered around the encampment were bones, human bones. Body parts in various stages of decomposition. Pots containing what appeared to be cooked meat. The remnants of human beings, treated like livestock. Joseph's mind couldn't process what he was seeing. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening in Lagos, in Nigeria, in the modern world. But it was. And somewhere in those shadows, Clifford Orgy was watching. Joseph ran. He didn't think, didn't plan. Pure survival instinct kicked in and he scrambled back up to the bridge, shouting, screaming, trying to get anyone's attention. There's a woman down there. Someone help. There are bodies. Call the police. In Lagos, People are often hesitant to get involved in others' problems. Mind your business, stay safe, don't be a hero, these are the unspoken rules of urban survival. But Joseph's panic was so genuine, so visceral, that people stopped. A crowd began to gather. Some brave souls followed Joseph back down under the bridge. And what they discovered would shock all of Nigeria. As more people descended to investigate, the full scope of Clifford Orji's crimes began to emerge. It wasn't just one body. It wasn't just bones. It was a systematic operation. Human remains in various stages, some fresh, some old. Body parts separated and stored. Cooking implements with residue that would later be confirmed as human tissue. The smell, now that people were paying attention, was unmistakable. Someone found female underwear, dozens of pieces, each one likely belonging to a different victim. A check for 80,000 naira, a substantial sum in 1999. And most tellingly, a mobile phone. In 1999 Nigeria, mobile phones were luxury items. Only the wealthy could afford them. What was a supposedly mad homeless man doing with such expensive items? The pieces of a much larger, much darker puzzle were starting to come together. The commotion under the bridge grew louder as more people arrived. Someone had already called the police, and sirens could be heard in the distance. Clifford Orji, realizing his sanctuary had been compromised, attempted to flee. Imagine his panic, years of carefully maintained deception, his perfect hiding place, all unraveling in minutes because of one man's curiosity and one woman's desperate cries. He didn't get far. Some accounts say the crowd caught him. Others say the police intercepted him as he tried to blend into the morning traffic. Either way, Clifford Orji was captured, and his reign of terror was over. Or so everyone thought. But the story of Clifford Orji was just beginning to unfold. When police secured the scene, they found someone else in Clifford's lair, a man named Tahiru. Who was he? What was his role in these crimes? Was he a willing accomplice, another victim, or something in between? These questions added another layer of mystery to an already baffling case. Tahiru was arrested along with Clifford, but his exact involvement was never fully clarified in public reports. The presence of another person raised disturbing possibilities. If there were two men involved, could there be more? How extensive was this operation? The nightmare was deeper than anyone initially suspected. While police secured the crime scene and arrested Clifford Orji, medical personnel tended to the woman who had been held captive. She was severely malnourished, traumatized, and had been sexually assaulted repeatedly over several days. She was rushed to a hospital in Ikeja for treatment, both physical and psychological. Her rescue was nothing short of miraculous. She had been hours, maybe minutes away from becoming another victim. In the days that followed, she would provide crucial testimony about her ordeal, though the trauma of what she experienced would stay with her forever. She was the lucky one. How many others never got that chance? At McKean police station in Oshodi, investigators began interrogating Clifford Orji. What they heard would shock even hardened police officers. Clifford didn't deny anything. In fact, he seemed almost proud of what he'd done. He admitted to killing and eating human flesh, claiming it was part of his culture from Enugu State, as if cannibalism were simply a family tradition he'd continued. He said he'd been doing it for years, even before moving to Lagos. He described his methods with disturbing casualness, talking about murder and cannibalism the way someone might discuss their job. But here's where it gets even more sinister. Clifford hinted that he wasn't working alone. He suggested connections to powerful people, to a larger network that traded in human body parts for ritualistic purposes. How deep did this conspiracy go? And why did he have that mobile phone and that check? When news of Clifford Orji's arrest broke, Nigeria exploded. Newspapers ran banner headlines: "The Cannibal of Lagos, Monster Under the Bridge, Nigeria's First Serial Killer." Television stations covered the story around the clock. People were horrified, fascinated, and terrified in equal measure. How could this happen? How could a cannibal operate for years in one of Africa's busiest cities without being caught? The story tapped into deep cultural fears about ritual killings, human sacrifice, and the dark underbelly of urban life. Rumors spread wildly. Some said Clifford had killed hundreds, others claimed he was part of a government conspiracy. In the absence of complete information, speculation filled the void. And the more people learned, the more questions they had. Police investigators faced an enormous challenge. How do you build a case around scattered bones and body parts? How do you identify victims when all that remains are fragments? They attempted to match missing persons reports with the evidence found under the bridge, but DNA testing was limited in Nigeria in 1999. Many victims were never identified. Investigators tried to trace the mobile phone and the check found in Clifford's possession, hoping they would lead to his supposed powerful connections. But these leads went nowhere, or perhaps they led somewhere that authorities weren't willing to follow. Was there a cover-up? Were powerful people protected? The truth remains murky. Clifford Orji was charged with murder and cannibalism, but his trial became a drawn-out nightmare of bureaucratic delays and legal complications. His mental state became the central question: was he mentally fit to stand trial? Some psychiatrists said he was genuinely insane. Others argued he was faking mental illness to avoid punishment. The truth probably lay somewhere in between, a damaged, twisted mind that was nonetheless capable of calculated deception. Years passed. Clifford sat in prison while his case languished in Nigeria's overburdened legal system. Witnesses disappeared. Evidence degraded. Public attention moved on to newer tragedies. Justice delayed is justice denied, and for Clifford Orji's victims, justice would never truly come. Throughout his incarceration, Clifford Orji remained an enigma. Who was he really working for? How many people had he killed? What happened to all those missing persons from the Oshodi area during his active years? The expensive items found in his possession suggested connections to wealth and power. In Nigeria, rumors of ritual killings involving influential people have long circulated. Body parts, particularly human organs, are believed by some to bring wealth, power, and success when used in certain rituals. Was Clifford Orji a supplier for these dark practices? He hinted at it but never provided concrete names or evidence. Perhaps he was protecting people. Perhaps he was embellishing his importance. Perhaps he knew that revealing too much would be signing his death warrant. The truth died with him, or perhaps it's still hidden, protecting the guilty. In 2012, after more than a decade in prison without a final verdict, Clifford Orji died. The official cause was listed as natural causes, but many Nigerians were skeptical. Was it really natural? Or was it too convenient that Nigeria's most notorious serial killer died before he could stand trial, before he could reveal names, before he could expose the powerful people he claimed to work for? Some whispered that he was silenced, that powerful forces ensured he would take his secrets to the grave. Others believed he simply succumbed to the harsh conditions of Nigerian prisons. We'll never know for certain. But his death ensured that the full truth of his crimes would remain buried forever. Today, the Isolo flyover still stands in Lagos. Life goes on, traffic flows, traders sell their wares. But those who remember February 1999 can never look at that bridge the same way. Families of the victims, those who were identified and those who remain unknown, never got closure. They never got justice. They never got answers about what happened to their loved ones in those final moments. The case of Clifford Orji exposed uncomfortable truths about Nigerian society: how easily the vulnerable can disappear, how the poor and homeless are rendered invisible, how urban anonymity can shield the most terrible crimes. But perhaps most disturbing is this: if Clifford Orji was Nigeria's first documented serial killer, how many others have gone undetected? The story of Clifford Orji isn't just about one man's descent into evil. It's about what we choose to see and what we choose to ignore. It's about the people society overlooks, the homeless, the mentally ill, the marginalized, and how they can become either victims or perpetrators in the shadows. It's about questioning the smell of cooking meat when it doesn't quite smell right. It's about investigating when something seems wrong, even when it's easier to walk away. Joseph Bellow's decision to investigate that crying woman saved a life and exposed a horror that needed to be exposed. His courage reminds us that paying attention, caring about others, and acting when something seems wrong can make the difference between life and death. The Bridge of Bones may be quiet now, but its story echoes a warning. Evil can hide in plain sight, right beneath our feet, waiting for the moment when no one is watching. Are we watching now? Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. In the shadows of our cities, in the places we don't look, darkness waits. The question is, what else are we not seeing?